Hello, my name is Susie, and I'm the owner of the Speckled Loon. Welcome to my channel. If you like DIY craft projects, then you are in the right place. I upload a new video every month to go with our DIY decor kits. If you are tuning in for the first time, thank you so much for watching my video. I hope you like what you see, and I hope you will consider subscribing to my channel. If you are a returning subscriber, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here. If you could please consider giving this video a thumbs up, then YouTube can push it out to more viewers who like this kind of content. Well, here we are. Fall is in the air, and today our DIY decor kit is all about Halloween. I am going to go through the projects in our Witchy DIY decor kit. The link to purchase this kit and all the projects we used to complete it are in the description box below. If you have any questions about the kit, please go ahead and just leave me a comment and I'll get right back to you. I'm excited to get creative with you, so let's head on over to the craft room and make our Witchy DIY decor kit. Let's go. Before we get started, I'd like to walk you through everything that's going to be included in your kit. It's going to come in this little box, and it's going to include instructions, and each component of the kit or project will be individually packaged, so all the little parts will stay together, and the little box serves as great storage once you're done displaying your kit. Your first project is the Happy Halloween sign, and then we have the haunted house. Both of those come with a stand. Then you have the little tag banner with the 5 tags, and the beads and string are included. Next we have our Witchy Gnome, and she has a stand and then 2 little tokens that she can hold that have a saying on either side. And finally we've got our garland kit, and that has the beads, the tag, and it is double-sided. Then you get a little bonus bag of spiders and bats, and then this adorable little wood engraved spoon, as well as the ribbon around it, as a completed project for you to add to your kit. This is what everything's going to look like painted up. You can see we've got everything attached and painted, and I'm going to show you all the different techniques that we use. And this is how little gnome holds her items. And she does have a stand as well. There's your tag banner, and then your garland has got 2 sides to it. We've got the boot side, and then the broom hair don't care, and then the little spiders and bats that you get to paint as part of your kit. Let's go over some of the supplies you are going to need to complete your kit. Your kit comes to you unfinished, so you're going to need to have some paint and a few other things. I use this orange and black Waverly chalk paint from Walmart. I used the Waverly paint also in a brown and an orange. And if you can't find that, any kind of paint will do, even the small little $2 bits from the craft store. I'm just showing you a stencil brush that I used to do distressing. And then for the smaller parts like the letters, the bats, that type of thing, I used paint markers. I got mine from Arteza. And then to do that ombre background, you're going to need either some foam brushes or those makeup wedges that you can get from the Dollar Tree. And then for the small little lines, you can use a paint marker or a Q-tip. The Q-tips I get are ones that you can use for applying makeup. They have a pointed edge and kind of a flat end on the other, and they make ideal paintbrushes for tiny spots. This is just a shot of the Arteza brand markers. Mine came in a 40 pack, so I have lots of colors. You can also find them at Hobby Lobby. This is their white one that's really good. And then you're going to need some baby wipes for cleaning up the edges of your pieces if you get some overbleed with your paint. And for glue, you can use this gel super glue from the Dollar Tree and put the little parts on with a toothpick. There's also wood glue, but that takes longer to dry. The glue I use, and you'll see me use this, is Starbond glue with a fine applicator tip, but it is just a different brand of super glue. It's what I use because I have it in bulk. You're also going to want to have a paper plate and a roll of painter's tape or a little bit of tape for securing down some things, and some scissors for cutting your ribbon. The first project we are going to tackle in your kit is the haunted house. It's a pretty easy project. There's only 2 pieces to it. There is the overlay that we're going to paint black, and the backer piece that we are going to do an ombre effect on. The colors I used were orange and yellow on the back, and then black on the overlay. And I used a marker, or we can use that Q-tip technique. I'm going to show you both. And then for the backer, we used our foam brushes and sponges. You're also going to need some glue and some clamps. The clamps are just there to hold it down while the glue sets. That's optional. If you don't have clamps, you can use clothespins. I put some some painter's tape sticky side up. I just taped it down on a paper plate, and that makes a great way to hold your smaller objects while you go ahead and paint them, and then you don't have to hold them down otherwise. And here I'm just showing you a black paint marker that I used on the backer, and it's really nice for that little areas and for going around the frame. If you don't have a black paint marker for the smaller parts, a black Sharpie will do as well. You can also use a makeup sponge on the black, or you can go ahead and here's that little Q-tip technique I was talking about, where you can just use a Q-tip around the small parts and the thinner areas. But I just went ahead on mine, and I used the black marker to finish up the backer. Once it's done, that's what it looks like. We'll set that aside to dry, and we'll get to work on the backer. So for the backer, I took a foam paintbrush, and I did the whole back in yellow first, but my yellow paint was kind of thick, so I sprayed a little distilled water in there with this mister. If you don't have a mister and your paint is thick, just put a little water from a water bottle in there, or bottled water in there, and that'll work too. And then I just scoop a little bit on the plate, and then I get some orange paint as well. You don't need really a ton of paint to do this project. So I'm going to take my backer, and I'm going to paint the whole thing yellow. Once I have it all painted yellow and the paint is still wet, I'm going to take a little bit of orange paint on one of those makeup wedges and just going along about the upper third to half of that circle. And I'm going heavier with the orange at the top and a little bit lighter toward the center. Then I'm going to re-dip a sponge in the yellow and kind of blend that orange into the yellow. I let that dry and I do a second coat, and this is what the end result is. And the ombre, you can just kind of keep working with it until you have it how you like it. If you get any paint on the sides, I like to keep mine clean so it matches up nice with the frame. I just take, while the paint is wet, a baby wipe or a makeup remover cloth, and that gets that paint off. And if it's dry down there, you can just color over the paint with a brown or black paint marker too. But I like to keep the edges clean for when I put everything together. Now I let all the paint dry completely before I put it together. And that's what the back of the items look like. You're going to put just a little bit of glue on the back of the haunted house overlay and then line it up. I like to do a dry fit and then decide how I like the ombre to be. I'm going to have it where the orange is on top. That's what I like best, but you can do yours however you want. And for the glue, you can use your super glue. I'm using my glue with the fine tip applicator, and it's really hard to see how tiny the dots are, but they're very, very small. If you're going to use the super glue, use the same thing. Teeny tiny little dots, and if you need them super small, you can put it on a Q-tip and then apply it. Once you have all your glue on, you're going to take the backer in one hand and the overlay in the other, and I like to rest them right on top of the table on a nice flat surface, and I kind of feel around to make sure that the frame evenly fits up and matches up good. And then I start to clamp it together. Because the frame is so thin, the clamps help so the glue sets, and then I set that aside and let it doesn't take long to set up, but I like to just set it aside and let it dry. Once it's done, you can display your little sign on this slotted stand that we included. Since it's round, it's nice to have a stand to set it on, and display it on your tray. And that is the end of our first project. Next up is our Happy Halloween sign. This sign is also really easy to make and fun as well. And this is what it's going to look like in the end product. Your backer on this one is actually made of plywood, so you get that nice wood look. It has got the word happy engraved in it already for you, so you don't have to worry about gluing down those little letters. And then it's got scored lines, so it looks like 4 planks of jagged wood. And you also have the word Halloween that we are going to color with our paint markers, as well as this little broom. And there's a raffia that we're going to put on the bottom of it to look like a real broom, and these little rectangular spacers that we're going to put on the back of the broom. It's going to raise it up off the sign to give it a little extra dimension. Then you have your small bat and spiders accents that we will put at the top. So the first thing we are going to do is we are going to work on all the little small parts that you're going to use your paint markers for. So I used an orange paint marker on the word Halloween and a black paint marker on the spider and the bat. I'm not going to show you every step of that since we already went ahead and used the paint markers on the previous project, but basically that's what Halloween looks like when it's all done. And then we use black marker, or you could use your Sharpie for the bat and the spider. We're going to set those aside and we're going to go work on the other elements of the sign. First, you're going to go ahead and take out the broom. I use brown antique wax, but you can just do brown paint and do the same thing. Just take a very small bit and just do the broom stick itself. And while the paint is still wet, you're going to take a baby wipe and just drag it across. And it's going to look like stained wood because that is made out of plywood as well. Then the next part, if you've got hot glue on hand, that will work perfect for this. I did not have my glue gun out, so I just went ahead and put a little bit of my Starbond glue, or little bits of your super glue will work good. Try not to get it on your fingers though. And you're just going to lay your pieces of raffia down, and if they're way too long, it's no big deal because we're going to trim them later. But go ahead and lay at least one layer down, and if you want the broom to have a fluffier look, you can do a couple layers of the raffia on top, but you just want to cover that bottom portion of the broom completely. And here I'm just holding them down until they're dry, and then you're going to take there's a brown string in there that we are going to use for a cord. You're going to want to wrap that around the neck of the broom. So this is what I'm doing. I'm taking the cord and I'm just wrapping it around the neck of the broom. And we do this again on another project in a slower motion. But basically I just wrap it and wrap it and wrap it, and I tie a knot on the back. And I do a double knot to make sure it's good and tight. And once I have a double knot, I go ahead and I just trim off the excess of the cord. And I'm probably doing a second knot there. So anyway, I'm trimming off the excess. Then I take my scissor and I just go right along the edge of the broom and I trim off the excess raffia. And now we're going to glue those little spacers on the back. You're going to put one on the bottom of the broom and one at the top of the broom handle. And that's going to raise it up so that it will be even because of the thickness of the knot and everything. Next, we're going to distress on our plywood base. So I'm just taking my brown antique wax, same thing with brown or black paint you can use, and I'm wiping most of the paint off. And then I am going around the sign and all the edges and a little bit along those scored lines. And I'm doing this distressing technique. And the key is to have a stiff brush and have most of the paint be off and just do very little bits, because it's very easy to add more. And if you get too much, since this is plywood, you can just sand it as well to get a more muted look. But that's what mine looks like once it's all distressed. Now what we're going to do is just put everything together. So I always like to do a dry fit first. I take the broom, the Halloween word, and the spider and bat and just see how I want to have it placed. And then I'm going to take and put small dots of glue with my toothpick or my super glue, however you want to do it. And then I just press it down to adhere on there and have it, kind of just eyeball it so it's straight. And then if you want, you can clamp it with your clothespins or those little clamps from the Dollar Tree. Now for the broom, all you have to do here is put glue on the spacer. So you're going to do 3 or 4 dots of glue, just very tiny dots, and then you're just going to press it down on top of that wood base. And if you want, again, you can take your clamps and put it right over the spacer, and that's going to hold it down nice while you work on the rest of your sign. So after that's dry, I'm going to do my bats and spider. I guess it's just one bat and one spider. I'm just kind of seeing where it's going to land. So I only put glue on the parts that are going to touch the sign, because a little bit of him is going to hang off, and likewise with the spider. And then you have your sign all put together. So this sign, just like the one before, comes with a small stand. You can go ahead and put your stand together, and then your sign will rest on that. And that is your Happy Halloween sign with the raised broom. It is time to make our Halloween tag banner. This is really a simple project and with a great result. I use paint markers on this as well as my antique wax to do some distressing, and I used purple, a light purple on the shoes and a dark purple on the base. For the spiders, I did an orange base and black on the spiders, and black on the bat with a green base. And I used a little toothpick to make a needle to string all the beads, and I'll show you how to do that. But first, what I did was I just used my paint markers to go ahead and paint all the pendants. And I'll just show you quickly how I did that on the green pendant. I did 2 purple, 2 orange, and 1 green. If you don't have paint markers, you could totally use that makeup sponge or the Q-tip like I just showed there, and just use it with your paint. But I just went ahead and colored them in, and they looked great. And when you're coloring it in or painting them, they have the little shiplap lines. If you get paint clogged up in there, go ahead and just take your toothpick and just drag it across the lines, and that will get any excess paint out of those lines, keeping them nice and clean looking. I do go ahead and distress on the green and the orange. I did not do the purple because of it being so dark, but I just did a light dry brush distress technique on the orange and the green pendants. Once I had the pendants looking how I wanted, I set those aside, and I again just used markers, black on my spiders and bat, and a light colored purple on the shoes. I did 2 coats of that lighter purple to get good coverage, and I just did 1 coat with the black, with that black marker. And then I have all the little pieces painted, and it's time to start putting everything together. So I'm going to string out or lay it out in the order that I want, and I just go ahead and I glue on the shoes and the spiders and then the bat in the middle, and that's how I have mine. You can arrange yours however you'd like. Maybe you want the shoes together and not at either end. I'm going to take my string, and it's quite long, so I'm going to double it up so it will be nice and strong, and I'm going to make that little needle at the end. So I'm taking my toothpick and I'm lining it up with the end of the strings, and then I am taking my piece of tape and I am just winding it around the very tip of that toothpick, and I'm getting it nice and tight, and then I'm going to string through the first little bead, and then I'm going to leave about 3 or 4 inches of a looped tail at the end of that bead. Then I am going to string the needle through one more time, and I am going to pull that tight, leaving that loop, and that just makes it so you have like an anchor for that bead and it stays in place and it's not going to shift around. Then I go through the front first hole of that first pendant, and then I go up and through the back and through that hole, and then I string on a bead, and I repeat that process till I have it all strung up. And then when it comes to the final bead, what I'm going to do is feed it through on the final bead, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'll go all the way up to the pendant, and then I'm going to feed it through a second time to anchor that in and secure it, so there's not going to be a lot of wiggle room. And then once I have that done, I am going to snip off the excess of that string and leave probably 6-8 inches, and I'm going to go ahead, and after I snip that, I am going to tie a double knot to further secure that string and make sure that the bead stays in place. So here I am doing that double knot. Once I have that double knot all done, I am going to tie a small knot at the end of the string, making the second loop, so you have a loop on either side, and then your pendant banner will be complete and ready to hang. And you can hang it on a magnetic tier tray with little hooks, or if you have wood, just string it on the tier tray. Our next project is the Witchy Gnome, and she is so fun. If you look at the finished project of her, she has got these little raised hands that hold 2 little signs that are reversible, and I think they're just adorable. She's kind of a fun little accent to have, and she's got her own little stand, and she stands just like that. So you've got all these pieces and parts that came with. There's the hat, the nose, and the little dress and the stand, and then there are 2 envelopes. One's going to say left, and that's going to have her left braid, the left band, the left tip of her braid, her shoe, a spacer, and a hand. And then there's going to be a similar envelope marked right with all the items that are going to go on the right hand side, just like on the left. And it's important to just keep these straight because they are sized perfectly to go in the exact spots. So we are going to start working on our small components, and we are going to work with a combination of paint markers, and we're going to even use a Sharpie in one spot. I used orange paint markers on the little bands at the outside of the hat, and we did orange and yellow on the actual little tokens, and I believe I used purple on the shoes and the base. So you can kind of see on her hat where we've got that ombre effect in the back, and then we've got orange and black on the hat itself. So we're going to work on that. To get that effect, I'm just going to take my paint marker, I'm going to go all around the outside of the hat. And again, if you don't have a paint marker, you can use that Q-tip method that we talked about, or even a Sharpie. But other than the black Sharpie, they don't work as great. I like to use the paint pens. But I am using the black Sharpie on the bats because it's got a super fine tip, little end, and it makes it good for getting in those little tips of the bat wings that are going to be going next to the orange. And this is what it looks like when it's all done. So now we're going to get to work, and we will paint up the rest of the things that are on the plate, and then we will start working on our tokens. So for the tokens, you can just take your marker and go right over the top. If you don't have paint markers for this, you can just leave the tokens unpainted. It's It's just an extra step that I like to do. I do orange on one side and yellow on the other, but you could do them all the same color. And then after I have those done, the last little pieces that we need to do with our markers are the hands and the nose. Now, if you do not have a flesh tone marker that you like, go ahead and just leave them natural, but I went ahead and did them kind of a blush pink or a ballet slipper pink, I think it's called, of those paint markers. A very light tan would work well as well. So we are going to get to work on the parts of her hair. I did go ahead and use that cotton swab Q-tip method on the hair. It kind of gave it some nice texture. Once I had the hair done, then you're going to see on her dress she's got two little spots that work for where we're going to place the spacers, and they will show very faintly after you have that all done. I did that in black on the dress. For the top of her hat, the base part, I did that ombre effect just like we did on the haunted house, and this is the only part of the base that you're going to have to paint. So I just went up, there's score lines on there, you can't see them very well, but you'll see them on yours. I did yellow and I wiped off the excess, and while it was still wet, I went in and started blending in my orange from the top down, and did that with those makeup sponges. Now we're going to go ahead and just do a distressing technique on each of the little tokens that she holds, and I also do it on her braids and the little braid tips that are at the end there. Once I have it all distressed, it is time to start putting her together. Now your gnome will again have those scored marks that are going to help you with placement, but it's really important to do the hat first. It kind of anchors everything and builds everything off it, and it's really important to get the hat on there straight and perfectly aligned. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just holding with my hands and making sure I've got the sides and the top of the hat all aligned to that base. And then I just clip it in place while it's drying. The next thing I'm going to glue on is her dress, and then everything kind of builds on there. So go ahead, and you don't need a ton of glue, just a few of those teeny little dots. And I'm going to make sure it's good and lined up with those curved lines that are on there that are already etched on her base, and bring it in. If you see it go out of frame, it's just me holding it close so I can make sure that everything's aligned, because I have bad vision and I don't want my head in the video. There I put a little bit of glue in the reservoir for the nose, and I just put the nose in. And then I put a little bit of glue on the back of the left hand braid, and I make sure that that's good and aligned with the sides, it's not hanging over. Then you do a little bit of glue on the very bottom of that base. You can glue on that little band. And then next you're going to glue on the very tip of her left braid. And again, you're just going to want to get that on there and make sure it's all aligned at the bottom and on the sides. I just clamped it down to secure it. And you're just going to repeat the process on the right hand side. Do the long portion of her braid, then the band, and then the little very end of the braid. And again, making sure everything's just aligned on your sides and in those areas that are cut out for it. Kind of goes together like a puzzle once you've got it all done. And I'm just doing the very tip. And your braids are done. Now we're just going to repeat the process for our shoes. I do a little dry fit first. It doesn't show great on this video, but the shoes are a purple and not a black. They're both very dark, but it does show differently in person rather than on video. So once you have those shoes on, I clamp those, and then here I missed the first part, but I'm just gluing those spacers right onto the little area that is set for them. I'm just doing a dry fit with one of the little tokens to make sure it looks good. Once you have your spacers on, you're going to glue your hands onto the spacers, just aligning that bottom curved part of the hand with the spacer, and you'll see there's that small little area there that's raised, and that's where the little tokens will fit in. And I've had gnomes like this in the past, and this gnome can hold things from kits in the past as well. But there she goes on her base, and she is complete. Now I'm just going to show you the little tokens that come with it. The one says "Come fly with me," and then when you take it out and flip it over, the other side says 100% that witch. And the other one says "The witch is in," and when you flip it over, it says "The witch is out." And that is your adorable Witchy Gnome. It is time to make our reversible Witchy Garland. This project has a boot on one side, broom hair don't care on the other, and these adorable beads. Your beads will be similar to this, but may vary a little bit. I used paint markers on the small parts, and then their distressing technique on the tag, and you've got all the words and a little broom and spacer, the tag, the tassel, the beads, and then the little raffia to do your broom. The first thing we're going to do is just use the paint marker on all our little parts. The base of the boot I do in black. I used orange on broom hair. I did a purple on don't care, and I did green on that little bow. On the little rungs of the sock part, I guess, of the witch's boot, I did them every other one in a different color, alternating between purple and green. Use that lighter purple, and then I just took my black marker and went up the sides of the sock. Next, I'm on the broom. I'm doing that same brown technique where I took my brown paint and wiped it off with a baby wipe. And then on the tag, I'm doing that same distressing that I've been doing on all the projects with the dry brush and the brown paint. Once you have everything painted, it's time to start putting together our tag. So we're going to do the witch's boot first, and I just kind of lined the center of the sock right up underneath that hole there and put that on, and then affix the bow to the top of the boot where it meets the sock. Next, I'm taking all my raffia, and it's a little bit too long, and I'm just cutting it in half. And I zoomed in here so you can see a little closer what we're doing. But I layered my raffia right on top of that glued portion of the bottom portion of the broom. Hot glue would work fine here. I just did what I had on hand, but I think hot glue might work a little quicker and it'd give you a little more of an instant bond. But go ahead and just get your bottom of the broom completely covered with the raffia or the straw. And then once that is done, you're going to take your cord, and I zoomed in a little closer so you can see how I did the cord on this, and you can do it the same as we did on the first project. But basically, you're going to take your broom, turn it over, and just wrap that cord around and around and around. And once you have it done and wrapped, you're just going to tie a knot on the back and just do that double knot. Pull it super tight, and then you are going to tie off the excess part of that cord and also trim off the excess raffia on the bottom so you have a nice shaped broom in the end. And it's just like the other one, it wouldn't sit on the tag with that cord on the back, so I have spacers for you. So you're going to just take a couple of dots and get those spacers glued, one at the top of the handle and one at the bottom of the broom, and it's going to rest nicely on the bottom of your tag. So now we're going to go ahead and do the broom hair don't care part on the tag. You can see how I've laid it out, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the broom kind of in the upper left hand portion of the tag, the hair on the right below that toward the right hand side of the tag, kind of in a staggered manner, and then the don't and the care same way. Then I'm going to take my broom and glue right on the bottom of those spacers, and use my little clamps again to just kind of hold down that broom and get it good and adhered. When we have the tag fully assembled, then it's time to start working on our beads. I have a close-up here for you in a few seconds of how the beads are going to go in order, and you can just go ahead and pause it right here and get your beads out if you wish and get them in that order. But we're going to start off by just unraveling the string from around our tassel, and we're going to make a needle just like we did in that tag banner. We're going to go ahead and take our toothpick and string and wrap that tape right around the tip to make kind of a needle. And the first bead you're going to do is that bigger bead, your anchor bead, and you're just going to start stringing these on in order. And you're going to just repeat that till you have your courses all strung in. And I'm just doing this super sped up because it's very repetitive. And you're just going to do that, and then you're going to end up with that other large anchor bead at the end. Once you have it all strung, then we are just going to take that excess and we're going to feed it through the hole in the tag and wrap it around a couple of times. And then once we have it wrapped around in that hole at least twice to give it that extra strength, then you're going to just feed your toothpick back up through about 3 of those beads, and you're going to cut off, so you probably have like maybe just 8 inches excess, and you are going to tie the first half of a knot in the front of the string, and then you are going to flip it over and tie a double knot on the back. So you're basically just wrapping those 2 strands around the strands that are in the middle, if that makes sense. And you're going to pull it tight, do a double knot, trim that excess, and you can just hide that knot right behind the bead, and it's quite secure. Then you are going to take your ribbon, fold it in half, and just kind of twist it around, and then just tie a single knot just like that. And then I like to dovetail my ends so it looks like a little bow tie. So I'm going to do that on one side, and then I fold it and I kind of cut upward, and it's wired ribbon, so I just kind of bend it in, and your garland is complete, and it's time to look at all our projects together. That is it. All our projects are complete. I want to take this time to thank you for joining us here on this channel for the Speckled Loon and hanging with us through all these projects. Here they are in their completed state, and at the end you'll see a little video of the tiered tray that I decorated with it, and you can see how I placed all the products. But if you enjoyed this video, remember to give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hopefully you'll join us on the next one. I upload one with every one of our kits, so you'll see a new one about every month. Thanks so much, and don't forget to look for the loon.